You are listening to All Clear, Firefighter Health and Wellness Podcast. This episode, Mind Your Money, with guest Brandon Rogers. How's everyone doing today? I'm Travis. Got Eric, my co-host over there. And we have a guest today. We have Brandon Rogers with us today, a longtime friend of mine who's going to talk to us about financial wellness. So just to kind of get started today, how you doing today, Brandon?
I'm doing good, Travis.
All right, excellent. Would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how
Sure.
you got to where you are and what you know that we need to know?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you, Travis and Eric, for having me on today. Again, also like to thank all the emergency and first responders out there as well that do what you do every single day. I know it can't be easy. So again, if I can help in any way, that's what I'm here for. But no, I mean, my background, co-owner, Trent Bradshaw and myself, we own Bradshaw Rogers Financial Partners, where offices is located in Salisbury, North Carolina. We basically help individuals, families, businesses, nonprofits, things of that nature, with financial planning, investing, tax strategies, things of that nature. And basically budgeting is a big deal. A lot of education. We're really education based. So there's a lot of things out there that I think in my career, I guess I've been in the industry now about 16 years. Securities license, insurance license, certified financial planner, professional designation as well, which is kind of the top designation in our field. And a lot of education are wrapped around that, right? So I guess growing up and going through school, you never really got a lot of the education about really important stuff like budgeting and planning, right? I mean, taxes. I mean, come on, right? There's a lot of things out there that are super important that I don't think the schools actually focus on. And even I went to Appalachian State, I had a business degree, still didn't really talk about it there either. So had to, figure this out on your own. And honestly, the career that I came into was financial advising. And like I said, it's kind of been there ever since I got out of college. So again, it's a very rewarding career. I love helping people and figuring this stuff out. It's a complex world out there. So, but everybody needs a little help when it comes to this. Schools nowadays are actually, I think, getting better at starting to educate this. We're called out to a local high school to talk about budgeting and stuff to a class of freshmen, which was pretty neat. So at least they are trying to approach that as now with the current youth today. So again, it's super, super important.
Excellent. Well, I know Eric has an immediate question, and his question is, how do I know somebody that's so smart? I know he's thinking that right now. But I will tell a little bit how I met Brandon. I met him through one of my coworkers, his wife, Starla. And Brandon is super cool guy. In addition to being financially wise, he also owns a Bobcat, knows how to tear up stumps, horses. So he's just all around good fella. So I figured he would be a good one to talk to us about financial fitness because, we're shooting for overall wellness of the firefighter. And, I hate to say it, I think a lot of firefighters are in worse financial shape than they should be, especially considering how regular their jobs are. So, Brandon, just what advice can you give to a new firefighter, say maybe 18 years old, just starting out? Like I mentioned, some of our guys started at 18. They'll be doing the same thing when they're retiring 30 years later. Mm-hmm. How can they make some smart decisions and not decide to go buy a jacked up Ford with 35-inch tires on it and, maybe be a little more responsible from the get-go?
Yeah. And again, you mentioned firefighters. I mean, honestly, everybody of all walks of life have these kind of issues as far as budgeting, spending, saving, investing, things like that for their future. So it's definitely not, not everybody's not immune to it. Again, even doctors and things of that nature still need help in this area for sure. So again, everybody's on the same playing field when it comes to that, in my opinion. But really, what we see is number one thing when we do the planning with the clients and people that we work with, the number one thing that I ask about before you even start investing or anything like that or saving is do you have an emergency fund? I mean, that would be step one, right? And why is that? Well, you need an emergency fund out there so you don't have to run to a credit card and then pay the bank all this absorbent amount of interest, right? So when you look at debt and how people accumulate that through credit cards, it's unnerving. And again, it's so easy today to spend money, right? I mean, I can sit on my couch and order something online, and it's here the same day or next day if I want to, right? Didn't have to get up and go anywhere. So, and everybody's coming at you to wanting to buy subscriptions. That's the biggest thing now, right? Subscriptions to things. Oh, it's just $5, no big deal. But when you got $5, $10, $15, $20 subscriptions adding up, I mean, it's pretty wild. So, I mean, technology is great, but you've got, as a consumer, you've got all sorts of marketing hitting you. So again, going to these credit cards is a big issue that we see, because again, you're paying a bank or a company 20+% in interest, and a lot of times, and that's blows my mind. Like I would happily loan out money if I could get a 20% return on it, no matter what, right?
Yeah.
So again, we can see a lot of people getting a lot of trouble with that, and we have to help the budgeting side of the equation. Just find out where your money's going. Right. And I mean, again, that might sound pretty straightforward, but again, you start really adding things up, you have a budget, then you really know where your dollars are going. But to get an emergency fund established, again, is the number one thing. So even if people come and say, I want to save for retirement, I want to, do this or do that. It's like, well, number one, let's get an emergency fund, because if something happens, and something will always happen, you need to have some cash on the sidelines to do that. And what that really looks like is 3 to 6 months of living expenses is really what you need to focus on and having that, right? So normally if you're on your own, I would say 6 months living expenses. If some people have a different mental calculation of what that number might be. Some people might want a year's worth just to feel comfortable, right? So, but again, emergency fund is the number one thing we always talk about at the very beginning, and you need to make sure you have that properly funded, because you're just going to get eaten alive by interest rate if something happens, because you're going to run to that credit card and pull it out.
So, you talk about having the emergency fund, mm-hmm. and you also talk about, watch, your interest rates and stuff like that. I know this is kind of a hot question, but is being in debt always a bad thing?
I mean, I guess, they say there's good debt and bad debt. I mean, being debt free should always be a goal of everybody's, right? No matter what. And, I would say if you want to classify it as bad debt. Well, bad debt's going to be your credit cards, right? Good debt, maybe you're buying at least potentially an appreciating asset, not a depreciating asset, like a vehicle, like your jacked up truck and your 35s or whatever it is, right? Yeah. I mean, those things are, once you buy that new vehicle, you drive off the lot, obviously it drops in value. So that's not an investment at all. It might hold its value, depending on the make and model of it, but it's always pretty much going to go down, right? So, I mean, when you go to, say, positive debt or good debt, I mean, it's really going to go towards, a piece of property or your home, right? I mean, that's what's, the American dream for a lot of individuals is to own your own home, right? But there's a lot of expenses that come to that, and nobody can just save up cash and pay cash for a house. That's almost impossible for anybody to do. So, therefore, you go to a bank, get your loan, and just make sure those interest rates are kind of in check for that. So again, good debt and bad debt. Obviously credit's very important these days. You got a lot of different places. In your home or auto insurance, I think, checks your credit. Your cell phone carrier might check your credit. So I mean, credit definitely is important, and you want to have something out there. Using credit cards is fine. Like I personally use a credit card for all my expenses, because it does a really good job of tracking expenses, classifying where you're actually spending money. But you got to make sure you pay it off every month, right? There's some points and rewards and things like that. I mean, that's all good and all, but again, you just got to make sure you pay that off, because it does help build good credit, and you don't want to be carrying a balance out there, right? So credit's important, good and bad debt. I believe there's such a thing.
Well, and that is something I will admit, when I was young, I wasn't in the fire service when I was 18. I came in later in life, but when I was 18, I made very not smart financial investments sometimes, or not even investments, just financial decisions that were less than optimal. And right. So that's something I see rookies now, and I see young guys that are in the fire service, and it's like, you're spending your money on what? Why? Do you have a house? No. Oh, okay. Well, and you kind of hope that they'll figure it out before it gets too far behind. But one of the advantages of being in the fire service is we have pretty decent retirement compared to some other industries. We have a pension that is better than some industries and things like that. So, what's your advice? I know you can't give specific advice, but overall, what would be your thoughts about retirement and trying to kind of sort that part of it out?
Yeah, I mean, retirement is definitely important. Again, there's many companies out there nowadays that don't have pensions anymore. Obviously, government type employees and things of that nature are it's one of the last places you can actually get a pension, right? The reason for that is companies, especially if they're publicly traded companies, they don't have pensions out there for the employees because it's a liability, so to speak, to the company to have to fund a pension for retirees, right? And it looks bad to shareholders if you're buying their stock. So a lot of companies shut them down. Duke Energy, for example, is a big employer, obviously in this area. They had a pension, but if you join them now, their pension's gone, right? And they do have 401k matches and things of that nature, which is great. Another big one, obviously, if you go kind of back in time, was Cannon Mills, right? I had a lot of family that worked there, and they had a great pension, right? They worked, they were there 30, 40 years, and that was their career because the pension kind of kept them there, right? So pensions do have positive things out there, something you can't outlive, which is nice. And when you have a pension out there, it's very, very important, a very good benefit. But again, it's just kind of dying. Closest thing a lot of people have now is really going to be looking at Social Security, right? So again, you have your regular job, your income, you're put back, you got your pension that you come, and then you have this little thing called Social Security that can supplement you. Well, nowadays, like I said, if you have a job where there are no pensions, you can't live alone off Social Security, right? It's a great program, but it's not. You can't usually function only on Social Security. Now, there's people out there doing it, but you're not living too much of a life. And when you want to retire, you want to live a little more, right? So saving for retirement is massive. Even if you do have a pension, I think you have to save even more just for the retirement and down the road. Again, the biggest thing that we hear from people that come in and kind of go through our process and look at everything, they might be in their 40s or 50s or even their 60s. And they're like, what? Hey, time flies, right? And Travis, you were just talking about that earlier. Time flies, you're in your 20s, you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, your 50s, 60s, and then you're like, oh crap, I might have to retire soon. Let's start thinking about that. And when somebody really gets serious about it, it's all about time. And the earlier you start, the better. Compounding is a beautiful thing when you start saving, and it can make a massive difference down the road. So again, if you got your access, obviously you got your pension. There's usually 401ks, 403bs, 457 plans that are out there. There's going to be more employer-sponsored type plans or government-sponsored plans that you can put more money into. Or if you want, you can, don't have to be tied to one of those plans. You could look at a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA from that end. Roth IRAs can be magnificent tools. It's a way I can kind of go through the differences between those two real quick, because I think it's very important to understand is that most of the retirement dollars today are pre-tax, right? Meaning, I'll give you an example. Say somebody makes $40,000 a year, they put $5,000 into a pre-tax IRA or pre-tax 401k. They're taxed at the end of that year on $35,000 of income, because the IRS says, hey, it's a good job. You put $5,000 back. You're not taxed on that income during this year. That money then grows tax deferred all throughout your working years, and when you pull it out in retirement, whatever you put in plus whatever it's grown to, you're taxed at whatever the current rates are at that time, right? Flip it back to Roth IRAs or Roth 401ks, things of that nature. There's a bunch of different versions of them. Same scenario. You make $40,000 a year, you put $5,000 back in a Roth. You're actually taxed on that $5,000 as income. So basically, you're taxed on your full $40,000 income that year. But any growth that you have on that over time, it grows tax-free. You pull it out in retirement tax-free. So Roths can be very, very advantageous. Again, it depends on your situation, depends on your filing status, depends on your overall household income. There's other rules associated with that. But if it's a good idea and your income's kind of in that range where where it makes sense. I mean, Roths can be powerful vehicles for sure.
Do you have an idea that you can't quite get out of your head and onto paper? Does your department need updated shirts? If so, you need to talk to the guys over at Studio Print Shop. We've been working with the guys at Studio on making some of our ideas become reality. Whether you need screen printing, embroidery, or graphic design, they have you covered. They're even working with the latest direct-to-garment printing technology to make your ideas come true. Check out their link on our website or go to studioprintshop.com and get 10% off your first order when you use the discount code ALLCLEAR. Studio Print Shop, creativity fueled by passion and vision. So, to break that down into firefighter ease, go talk to your financial advisor. Find you a good one, like Brandon or someone else like that. Find someone who's qualified and knows that, because I used to work with a guy. He's retired now. He could tell you down to the dime how much he would be making on the time of retirement. It's kind of hard to do that now with moving targets and things like that going on. So, Brandon, don't you agree that finding a good financial advisor is a good idea as early as possible?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, that's the biggest thing that we hear about from individuals saying, dang, I wish I would have met you earlier. I wish I would have started thinking about this earlier. I mean, it makes a massive difference. Again, work with someone that you can trust. I'd say get referrals from someone if you don't know anybody. Just like anything else these days, I mean, there's a lot of good information out there that's free if you're a self-learner and have interest in it. I mean, YouTube has tons of good videos. There's different podcasts, out there that's great as well. I mean, we actually do our own podcast called Mind Your Money, and we have a bunch of different episodes that talk about all this stuff in a little more detail. So, and it's free. It's out there now on every major platform. So, free information also can be good as well. The information's out there. You just got to take the initiative and go find it.
No, that is very awesome. So, we are, like I said, in a unique place. A lot of guys start at 18 and they're still doing it when they retire 30 years later. But Eric, you remember when you and I had the conversation it's a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how so many firefighters, hey, they work 24 hours, have 48 off. Well, in those 2 days, they have a landscaping business, or they pressure wash, or they are a mechanic, or any number of things, and how they become dependent on that.
Yeah. And, we see that kind of stuff a lot, that, emergency services, and like you said earlier, Brandon, this is any young person, really getting into a career field, whatever it is that they think that it's going to be long lasting. Really need to be thinking about this stuff, because I remember when I got into the fire department, first got hired, it was, wow, I get paid every 2 weeks, and it looks pretty good. And next thing you know, you're out buying the trucks. You're out, not saying like useless spending, but, 18, 19, 20 something years old, when you first have a steady income, we really don't pay attention to the long haul, so to speak, that, hey, we've got to make this money last, 20, 30, the rest of our life. And, getting that mindset of living within a certain means and not overextending ourselves at a young age has got to be important. I'm getting ready to turn 50 in a week, and it's like, holy cow, where'd this time go? And I remember getting hired onto the fire department. Here's a 401k plan. No idea what that is. No clue. Where do you want to invest your money? Well, just here, invested in all this high risk stuff. I got 30 years worth of career, if it goes up or down or whatever else, not really thinking about it. And now it's like, hey, I'm 50 and I'm out on a medical disability retirement. So my income is at a fixed income right now. And wow, where did that time go? I look back at all the poor decisions that I made financially, coming up through my career. And you mentioned a few things of, this might be something that when we're teaching these young kids, coming into the fire academy, bringing somebody in like you, to say, hey, let's talk about your future investment here financially in this career field. Because in school, they're definitely not getting it. Basic life skills of how to plan a budget, how to pay bills, little things. Well, you don't see a whole lot of checkbook balancing anymore. It's all online, but those simple life skills that we really don't think about until almost it's too late, within our career. Valuable information being delivered here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But I do have kind of piggybacking off of that. We talk a lot about not the wasteful spending, but we live in the Amazon world where I can order it and have it here in a couple hours, different things like that. If you look around, you see a lot of kids are using things like DoorDash, different things like that. Well, I'm just going to have McDonald's delivered to that. When I was in high school, if you wanted McDonald's, you had to drive down to get it. You see things like that happening. You see folks using like different credit apps. I think one of them is, I can't think of the name of it right off the top of my tongue. It just jumped out. But like where they'll give you like a payday loan and you can get, and you pay it back within like 2 weeks or a week or whatever. And I know it's not as predatory as some of like the title lenders and stuff like that. But when you start seeing all these little, schemes, for lack of a better term, on the internet and different things like that, what's your advice on those? Because a lot of guys are like, well, I can get an extra $200 to get me through till Friday, and I get paid then. Yeah, you do get paid, but you're winding up spending for things that you might not expect. So what's your thoughts on things like that as well? Just the convenience fees and things like that.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, they're not doing it to be your best friend and do because you're doing you a favor. I mean, there's something in it for them, and like you say, you got to look through the fine print and the red tape and see what you're really paying for, right? Me personally, again, I don't know. I looked at DoorDash one time. I think I was in an unfamiliar city, and I was like, let's see what this DoorDash is all about. And I opened up the app and I ordered something from a simple place, and it just seeing the extra charges that were on there, I'm just like, nope. Not using it. Like, it's not worth it. It's just insane. Yeah, convenience is nice and it's also worth the price, but like, I don't know, I just it rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm like, I'm not using this. Now I know there's some places during peak hours they'll do free delivery and stuff like that, and again, convenience can be nice, but just be careful, because also too, you're creating a habit, right? And you're oh, well, I don't have it now, or let's just go get a quick fix and do this little payday loan or this advance. Again, you go to any store nowadays, I mean, they're going to ask you, hey, would you like like Marshall's, right? For example, same, you go in there, what do they ask you every time you walk up to the register? They'll say, hey, you want to open up a credit card today and save 10%? I'm like, no. First of all, no, I don't actually. You know what I tell them? I tell them, no, cash is king. That's what I tell them, and I move on. And but one of the times I did it, and I was at Boot Barn and buying a pair of boots, and went up to the register. The lady asked me, would you like to buy a Boot Barn credit card? I'm like, no, I'm good. I was like, actually, you got a pamphlet on it? And I looked through it, opened it up, turned it around, and I think the interest rate on it was like 23%. Ow. And I look at this lady she was probably in her mid to late 60s, and I was like, dang, the interest thing on this thing's like 23%. And she's like, oh, well, that's not that bad. And then I was just blew my mind, saying like, wait, what? How is this okay? Like, this is not okay, So again, it just be very careful with that. Look at the fine print. Again, that's you get in a habit, and that's where you can get yourself in trouble, and you rely on it. I know there's other, like Affirm, there's other companies like that where you can buy anything and just finance it, right? I mean, look at the difference, right? I mean, sometimes there's not a difference, but you say, hey, you could buy this for, $200, or you can pay $10 a month for like 10 years, and you're good. You know,
Well,
you can have it.
what about I don't know if you can speak on this or not. What about like debt consolidation companies? You know, where somebody might rack up, you know, 3, 4, 5 different credit cards, and
Yeah.
they're struggling to pay those bills off, and they decide to go to a a consolidation company. Can that have negative impacts on you as well?
You can definitely use those. I would, before I would go that route, I would basically ask that credit card company to say, hey, let me just be real with them. Sometimes, I mean, you'll be surprised at how much they'll actually work with you. I had a friend that kind of got in a bind, and you know, he basically took a lot of strength for him to come ask his buddy for help. You know, I mean, that takes, nobody likes asking for help, especially guys, right? So,
Right.
Because you might be embarrassed by it about what you've done, right? And you don't want that to be ruined. But you know, asking for help is a huge first step, and there's places out there to get help. And one of the things that he actually looked into, which is called the credit card company, and said, "Hey, I just came into hard times. This is happening. Whatever. Don't know if the story really makes a difference to those people, but still, you just say, hey, I have an issue. Can you work with me?" And what they actually did is stopped like his interest from accruing, or lowered it dramatically, I believe, and just said, hey, you pay this much every month until it's gone, and you do it that way, right? Going into debt consolidation, that can also be a company that can also be an option. You know, there's a bunch of different ones out there. But you know, you just want to make sure your credit isn't negatively impacted as least as possible, right? And there's a lot of different things that can control your credit, since so many things are tied to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've worked with a lot of people that, you know, they've done a good job, they save, they pay everything cash, they don't have credit, but then they get denied for something very simple. It's because they don't have any debt, and it's just like, but that's a good thing, right? You know, so
Counterintuitive.
yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you know, something else that I feel like that I will probably be asked about if I don't ask you. I know you cannot speak to cryptocurrencies, and you can't speak to specifics and things like that. But when we start seeing these, I'm not going to say get rich quick, but when your buddy comes to you, hey man, you need to invest in blah, 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 whatever the coin or whatever I don't even know what this stuff is, the non-frangible NFT, whatever. So when somebody comes to you and says that, what's the first thing I should ask them?
I mean, I don't think there's anything that really is get rich quick. I mean, it's not out there. If it's out there, you would know about it, and the guy who figured it out would be preaching about it. I mean, it's exciting. Investing and everything is exciting. When my investment advice in general is to really, I mean, look at it as long term. Diversify your assets. You know, if you like a company that's out there, do your research on them. You know, right? You know, look into companies that actually create a product or service. You know, have employees, have big brick and mortar buildings or office buildings as well, or they actually have audited financial statements, right? That's a real thing. So, and invest in quality companies and invest over time. I mean, that's the best thing to do. And let's go back earlier when you talked about saving as far as retirement. A lot of people, when you put money in and save in a retirement type account or 401k or whatever it might be, the best way to do it is, how do you put money in it, right? You put it in every single pay period, right? Could be once a month, could be every 2 weeks, whatever it might be. But you're putting in to the market as it's having its ups and downs, right? There's about 14 moves every year inside the market, up and down, that can be pretty drastic, right? So nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows when it's going to happen. There's a lot of analysts out there that have opinions, but you know, all it is you can't time the market. It's impossible. All right. You can get lucky sometimes. And normally when you hear those stories of people hitting it, you hear all their good stories. You don't hear their bad stories, right? So,
Right.
So that's a big key too. It's just be leery of some of the stories some people tell you, right? But again, everybody's needs are different. Everybody's risk tolerance is different. Appetite for risk. Again, everybody wants to get rich quick, right? But hardly anybody does. So just be careful about that. Get rich slow, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
And the last question I have, and I'm sure Eric's got one or two as well. I know we don't want to monopolize your intelligence and your knowledge of this. All this inflation we see, eggs are expensive, milk is expensive. It cost me $50 the other day for 3 hamburgers for my family at a restaurant that wasn't that good. With all this inflation we see, should we be panicking, or do you think it's just a phase?
I think it's a phase. I mean, you basically come off of all the rate hikes that we had last year in 2022, right? So this is the most rate hikes that we've had in the last 40 years. I believe it was roughly about, 12 potentially in a row, which is like unheard of. And the Federal Reserve was raising rates to try to combat this inflation, right? So it's come down drastically off its peaks. This was really July of 2022. Inflation was in the high 9% range. Now it's in kind of 4-ish range. So the Fed's only tool in their toolbox really is to raise rates, and that's the only thing they can do to do it, to try to get the inflation down, and it has worked over time. So Jerome Powell, as the Federal Reserve Chairman, is really trying to do everything he can to keep that and get that inflation down. But you're right, even it might come down when it's printed and you see it on TV or you read an article about it, but you still feel it when you go to the grocery store, right? The major consumer price index actually takes out food as one of its food and energy is one of its components because it fluctuates so much and it's so volatile. So you might see they say inflation's come down, but I sure don't feel it. You're right. I mean, I went to the grocery store and got like a bag of groceries. It cost me $100, and I'm just like, what just happened here, right?
Yeah.
But that impacts everybody, and there's a lot of people that are on fixed incomes, and maybe they are only on Social Security, and maybe they don't get really good cost of living increases. To nothing, I don't think really actually truly follows the inflation side of the spectrum when you get your cost of living increases, but something's better than nothing by far. But again, it goes back to the importance of saving now, because it will happen again. And, it might not seem that bad when you're working now, but you will get impacted down the road. But again, if you plan properly, you'll be ready for it when it happens.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Cool deal.
It's the little things too, of being mindful of your spending, I see it, and I used to be part of it too. Guys on the job that are working 2 or 3 jobs, always complaining they don't have money, whatever else. And they've always got a cup of Starbucks in their hand or something like that, going out to eat 2, 3, 4 times a week. And it's like, man, you cut a couple corners, you still live comfortably, but guess what? You're going to be able to put some money away, and you might not have to be working yourself to death. And my wife and I have had to do that several times, and it's amazing. You mentioned like DoorDash, people, they're paying for convenience. And, if you start cutting that back, maybe you have a couple of apps like that. Okay, maybe I don't need to utilize 3 of them. If I want to use one every once in a while, okay, no big deal. I cut down on the number of trips to Starbucks that I'm making every week. Dunkin' Donuts, fast food, going out to dinner 2, 3 times a week. That's going to add up. And next thing you know, hey, I've got money. And it's nice. And invest that in the future, and make sure you're going to be comfortable in the long run instead of just right now.
Yeah, and I mean too. Look at it. As I always like the saying is that I remember as a kid, my grandmother had a thing she knitted and hung on the wall with a bunch of sayings, and it said, "A penny saved is a penny earned." There's a lot of truth to that, and pennies make dollars. Right. So it all adds up. Right. So that's the biggest thing that I ask people when they actually say, hey, I got a spending problem, whatnot, what can I do? When you get to items, if you're out in the store or you're you're online scrolling through stuff. I mean, you just got to identify a need versus a want, right? Is this something I need or is it something I want? And then see how many times you put that in the want category. Think about it real hard and do that. Another big thing I think that helps, and again, we talked about credit cards and all that, right? It's just, I know it's difficult and a lot more difficult than today, but there's a reason why some places don't take cash anymore, right? I mean, think about it. Just try it. If you don't listen to anything else on this podcast today, just try this one thing, one exercise in real life is that go somewhere. I don't know if it's going out to eat, or maybe if you go somewhere you're buying a part for your truck, or you're going to, Lowe's or whatever it is, just take cash with you and when you try to buy that $100 tool or whatever it might be, or product that you want, when you peel off those dollar bills or 20s or $100 bill, like, it's hard to let that go, right? But you take a card out of your pocket and swipe it on that machine, it's no problem. The credit card companies have a great job of disassociating, I think, the true value of a dollar, and they put it on this little magnetic strip or this chip, or you wave it and something magical happens when you put it up against the machine, right?
Kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And
that's it.
I know I got into trouble early on in my career, with some credit card debt, and it was like, oh, I can buy that right now, even though I don't have the cash. Mm-hmm. And you're not thinking at the end of the month, there's going to be a bill sitting in the mailbox.
Yep.
And I couldn't buy what I wanted to begin with, so I put it on this card, and now I've got this bill that I can't pay it. And it can get in trouble. I liked what you said, cash is king. I try to do everything as much as possible with cash, because it is hard to let go of those green pieces of paper.
Yeah. I was very true. As a kid, if I had a $100 bill, if I got it for my birthday or something like that, or a $50 bill, if I had Grant, sitting there in my pocket, or I folded up and I put it somewhere because I just didn't want to spend it. Right, I would walk out of a store if that was the only bill I had left, because I didn't want to bust that big bill. But I mean, again, that's the tie that you had to actual cash that you don't have with just a regular card.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. Well, Brandon, thank you for taking time to give us some financial education. Hopefully you'll be willing to come back and maybe do it again in the future, because there's a lot of stuff that we still need to learn to be financially responsible as adults, and I'm still working on it myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
thanks for having me, for sure.
I appreciate you being here tonight. I got a lot out of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So again, ask for help. It's not a problem.
Yeah, not at all. Hey, Brandon, you want to see something cool? Watch this. Hey, Eric, did I tell you I got to go to I got to go to the dentist tomorrow. You know what time?
You broke up there. I couldn't hear you.
Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah, now I'm breaking up.
No, seriously.
You know what time I have to go to the dentist tomorrow?
No.
Tooth hurty.
Okay.
I'm glad that broke up.
Yes, me too. Oh, my gosh. Travis and his dad jokes.
No, well, seriously, we try to throw a dad joke in at the end to kind of lighten it up, and also to show that, hey, we do need some more listeners and subscribers. And anyway,
it's painful.
It is painful, almost tooth hurty. Anyway, but anyway, Brandon, in all seriousness, thank you again. How can folks get a hold of you if they want to send you an email?
Yeah.
Anything like that?
I would say go to our website. It's a really good resource. It has a lot of educational videos that you can have links to our podcast there. Again, that's Mind Your Money. But it's BradshawRogers.com. Again, there's a lot of really good resources, and it's free. Just take the initiative, go out there and look at it. If you got questions, there's a contact us link out there, or give the office a call. We'd be happy to help you out any way we can.
And tell them that you heard about it on All Clear. Anyway,
there you go.
But thank you again. And again, folks, thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to listen to us. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have been listening to All Clear, presented by the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Alliance and the First Responders Peer Support Network. All Clear is written and produced by Travis McGaha and Eric Stevenson and recorded on Riverside FM. Opinions and views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast. Please subscribe and rate us on your podcast app of choice. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Discussions in this show are for educational purposes only. Information presented should not be considered specific investment advice or a recommendation to take any particular course of action. Always consult with a financial professional regarding your personal situation before making financial decisions. The views and opinions expressed are based on current economic and market conditions and are subject to change. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. Securities and advisory services offered through United Planners Financial Services, member FINRA SIPC. Bradshaw Rogers Financial Partners, Inc. and United Planners are not affiliated. United Planners and its representatives do not offer tax or legal advice.